This moon is in the sign of Aries, and it puts an emotional need on action, independence, and a desire to be first. So your safety urges could be tied to executive instincts, professional ambitions, and pragmatism. So if this is you, you probably feel most secure when you're working, getting some tangible results, or wielding your authority. But this influence can also provoke a very competitive outlook, especially if you perceive opposition to be a threat. And the goal during this cycle may be to protect your position. On the other hand, you could be repressing the urge for independence and find yourself dominated by others. But this moon stirs up protective instincts, both of self and others. And so you may attract someone in need of nurturing, or maybe you have concerns for the social welfare. With the moon tucked away in a private sector of the chart, you'll focus on your home, domestic affairs, and emotional needs, and that might include thoughts concerning an engagement or marriage. But you can be conflicted between dominance and dependence on home or family or career, and this might motivate excessive attempts at conservatism and self-preservation. Now, there's a strong restlessness that makes you want to travel or explore your expression for mental freedom. But the emphasis is on the residence and how to create a level of comfort and maybe insulation from the demands of the outside world. And the changes you make tend to correlate with inner changes that reflect that desire for security and a firm foundation. So you may decide to renovate or change your space in some way. And some of you may enter or focus on a career that connects to real estate, dealing in property or land, interior design, or decorating. And opportunities can present to either make money or spend money. Some of you have a talent for buying property, or you're running a business from home. But there can also be overconfidence right now that drives you to make risky investments. Now, your emotional needs take priority as well, and you're looking at patterns, habits, and past conditioning that is currently affecting your life. And that includes looking at the support you receive from others or that you don't. And maybe you decide to withdraw from people who can't give you the kind of emotional intimacy that you need, especially if you do best in a solid, established, or enduring relationship. Because unfortunately, you could be feeling torn about discrepancies in your relationship, especially if you're being told one thing, but on a gut level, your instincts are telling you something entirely different. And that conflict makes it difficult to even know what to believe. So extreme sensitivity can make you become more emotionally possessive about people and about possessions. And maybe it's your needs are being marginalized and you don't even realize it until it's brought to your attention. You do have increased intuitive powers that can help you see through the hidden motivations of others, and you may see more or come to know more than you were previously aware. And some of this may be through significant conversations that have a profound impact on you. Again, you're becoming more cognizant of the subtle shift in position because of power plays. For some of you, this may be merely in the role of observer, may be backed by your education and your training in psychology or metaphysics. So if that's the case, studies bring insights used to help other people. And maybe even you're a natural psychic. But right now, Venus is entangled with a stellar influence that brings up depression or a difficulty with self-esteem. You could be feeling alienated from society, or maybe you're struggling to cope with your role in the world. And not surprisingly, this energy also underscores issues of racism or groups that suffer because of their race or religion, and a corresponding influence of telling people that the end justifies the means. There's still a South Node energy that focuses on working for alternative or unacknowledged groups, or linking your life to empowerment of people who don't have a voice in society, or wanting to give a voice to the unexpressed opinion, which may or may not be in the form of positive expression, especially if you've become self-righteous, dogmatic, or closed to differing perspectives. For some, the goal is to seek insights into spiritual beliefs, or there's a motivation to act with a strong belief. Now, Mercury is now stationing retrograde, and it's also tied to a star where it's the scholar, the explorer, or learning that's highlighted. And so it may be a focus on avid readers or people who gather information. And so maybe you have an interest in collecting knowledge about other people's culture or their history. Or maybe it manifests as just your own personal desire to explore the world intellectually or physically. Maybe you're someone who's always broadening your horizons and expanding your education. And this might be a good time for some self-study. Personally, though, the moon can incite a challenging experience that compels a major transition that could touch on every aspect of your life. Some of you are going to have an encounter with someone that forces you to do some soul searching, or it's going to force very powerful change in your life and questions surrounding your value structure. You might also discover some truths as well about the impact you have on others. So maybe you decide to relocate, quit your job, retire, go back to school, have a child. Maybe you're returning to a career. Or maybe you're in the process of getting separated or divorced, or you're leaving home for the very first time. For a very small few of you, this is a situation where you or a loved one is facing a serious or terminal illness. Now, these situations will include a power struggle involving sex, money, or morals. But it also gives you a chance to empower yourself on some level. If you have been wronged in the past, you're going to want to take the offensive so that you can eliminate the possibility of a repeat. But in some cases, the answer is to disengage if the goal is positive resolution. These circumstances can stir up anger, but the lesson is to direct anger and your effort at the appropriate target or goal. And this energy can also turn in on itself, making you look for unusual ways for self-defense or revenge. But the message is to look for productive behavior for better results. You need to look for ways to handle challenging situations more effectively in the present than you have in the past. Now, right now, you're deeply influenced by your home life, and you may have a strong fear about being alone or being alienated. You want stability, and so some of you are doing some financial planning, maybe some investment. The goal is to pay off debt. But you have concerns possibly about jointly shared finances and resources, or you're worried about getting financial backing or borrowing money. So you could be in discussions or negotiations concerning jointly held property or how to consolidate. And some of these situations link to a short-lived window of opportunity connected to partnership, agreements, or legal situations involving a fiduciary responsibility where one party has a duty to act in the best interest of another. And in the broader world, it's also going to bring into public view matters related to the care, the cultivation, and breeding of crops and animals, as well as the conservation and management of resources. However, this moon indicates that there are going to be some blockages, some delays that specifically affect matters involving mental labor. Your shot at happiness and success might be linked to travel, spirituality, higher education, philosophical thought, or publishing. Perhaps your destiny is linked to circumstances far from home, or it's possible that you'll profit through and from people at a distance. But there is a challenge here that brings problems with communication and transportation. And there could also be difficulties with education and siblings. So if you take a trip right now, it might not be as pleasurable as you had hoped because of the weather or delays or connections or accommodations. So it just depends on your tolerance for going with the flow. Or you might have a sibling who's dealing with some serious issues and they're facing that at this time, or they're refusing to. Whatever it is makes it difficult to discern the difference between achievable goals versus just fantasy. And it's tied to an area where you can be easily deceived either by yourself or by others. So the need is to be more critical in providing the answer to a question, or to realize that you're being overly critical to the detriment of a situation. On the other hand, you could be fearful or phobic about ever taking the initiative. You might be overly self-critical, or maybe you have found yourself tied up with someone who seemed optimistic, generous, bright, but once you got sucked into that alliance, that's when the relentless criticism started to tear you up. And for some of you, there could be issues surrounding health, especially relating to repression, violence, or assertiveness. The tendency is to go to extremes, either too much or too little, with regard to personal action or physicality. So if this is you, you're learning how to care for yourself and others. It might be that you're bravely confronting a situation against the odds, yet after putting up this great fight, you still may have to hand over what you hold to those powers stronger than you, and you may have to just be content with whatever consideration is given to you afterwards. The cards assigned to this moon are the Page of Wands and the Four of Wands. So this time frame could bring exciting news or news that prompts immediate action. And this news may be related to a young person. So it could be a message about a pregnancy, or maybe it's the health or the family life or the personal behavior of a child that's in focus. With the Four of Wands, the news might be related to a vacation, a wedding, a property, or a project that showcases brilliance, or a social gathering that puts you at the center of attention. Or maybe it's a small getaway. So you're going to take or make small opportunities linked to good news, invitations, or changes in the daily routine. So you might have interruptions or maybe drop-in guests, but these things are pleasurable for you. And it's the little things that make a big difference in your relationship, your outlook, your environment. And if that Four of Wands is operating at its best, it's one of the most fortunate cards in the deck, and together with the Page, it's inspiring optimism, childlike curiosity, and positivity that springs forth the birth of new ideas and opportunities. So small things carry unexpected potential that can reinforce your security, create beneficial change, and win-win situations. At the very least, it brings the truth up about where you stand in matters through a mutual exchange that lets each party size the other up. But for some of you, the retrograde and delays indicated in the moon chart will create a number of small inconveniences and last-minute changes that play havoc with your agenda and make it all the more difficult to complete your objective. So you'll have to work harder to reach a goal professionally, academically, or emotionally. And you might also jump into situations without forethought, especially if you're involved with someone who can't be relied upon. One of you might be insensitive, immature, or trying to dominate the other. There can be issues of unfaithfulness, instability, or feelings of powerlessness. And if a partner is selfish and manipulative, they'll use a petty advantage or spite to keep you off kilter and guessing. If the criticism I mentioned earlier is an issue, then nothing the other person does is going to be pleasing, no matter how hard they try. So your relationship could be going off the rails in a number of small ways that make you feel uncomfortable, but you can't quite pinpoint what it is, maybe when it started or why it started. But you just know that it doesn't feel right, and you don't know why it's happening. And if this is your situation, you're going to have to rethink matters that affect your security as it starts to become apparent that too much self-involvement or too much self-interest has been blinding you to the facts.